Hello everybody and welcome to my tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about how to import a fuzz map into Cinema 4D and Octane that came from Quixel Megascans. It came from an asset that we downloaded from their website for use as a texture file for use on this object to grow fuzz and mosses and different type of surface effects that asset may require. Now, here is the folder with all the assets that I downloaded from their website, and we already have it loaded in Cinema 4D, and here is the fuzz map. Now, this tutorial is actually an extension from a previous tutorial that I made where I show how to set all this up. I show how to import all these other image files and how to work with everything else shown here, how to download it in the full process and what it all means, and how to bring it into Cinema 4D and set up everything we have here, including this material right here that I can double click to open up and go to my node editor and set up this entire material for this object. So if you guys want to know how to set all this up, feel free to click this little pop-up right here or click the link in the description of the video and it'll take you to that YouTube video to show you guys how to set all that up. But moving on, without further ado, let's continue on talking about this fuzz map. Now, there's two ways of implementing this fuzz map right here, this black and white image that shows where we would like to grow fuzz on the surface of our object. So I'm first going to show you the first way. This is actually using the hair object. It's very slow, but gives you the most realistic result. And the second way is a little less realistic, but it renders much quicker and it is much easier to work with. So I'll give you two options and then you can decide which one you want to use for your project. The first thing we're going to do though is let's talk about the effect we're going for. If we look at this render right here, we can see there's some fuzz on the surface of our rock and it looks pretty good, and specifically right here you can see this nice kind of fuzz effect going on right there. So to begin, let's start by using this inside of Cinema 4D and Octane. To begin, you might think, okay, we're going to put hair on our object. Let's select our object, go to Simulate, Hair Object, and then Add Hair. We do not want to do this. If we did this that way, it would apply a hair guide for every polygon on our object. And if I do the shortcut N plus B, it actually, there's a lot of polygons on this object. There's over 1 million of them. So we'd have over 1 million guides, and it would probably crash the computer. So not recommended to do that. So to avoid this, we're going to deselect everything. Just left click over here so nothing's selected. We're then going to go to Simulate, Hair Object, Add Hair. Now, let's manually set this up so we don't have to worry about that. We'll select our hair. We'll change our guide. Let's go to Guide Mode. Change our root from Polygon Vertex to Polygon Area. And then let's drag our asset rock right here that we got and pull this in as a link. I also want to point out that I also have a floor and a Octane HDRI sky environment set up along with my render settings set to path tracing and just a few defaults. If you want to know more about what I set up in here, feel free to check that other video in the description of this tutorial if you want to check that other tutorial out. But again, sorry for that hold up. Let's continue on. Now that we have our hair applied, first thing we need to do is take our length and bring this down to something like 1.5. I found to be a good height. And next, we need to also adjust the density now of where this is growing. Now, some of you may have noticed inside our hair material, we do have a density section right here. If we right click on this and do show help, I kind of want to point something out about this. It's actually not giving us very much good information on this at all. I think there's something down here, displace, tighten. Here we go, density. What I want to point out about this density is it is a global effect. Meaning, as you can see here in this image, it applies hair to everything inside the hair material and then simply just says don't render this part. This means if we put our density map inside of here, it would render hair over the entire object and then simply just take it away at spots where this texture is not saying to grow. This is very bad because we still have to calculate all that hair. That means if we say let's grow 1 million hairs, it's going to put 1 million hairs all over the whole rock and then just crop it off down to here. That means we have to add a lot more hair just to make it look right here. So the better way, in my opinion, is just select our hair object and we have a density section right here under guides. So if we twirl all these down by default, this is what you're going to have. You're going to select your hair object, go to guides, and then select growth. Twirl this down, and this is where you're going to put that fuzz map. We're going to drag the whole map right here into density. Now, you're not going to see any changes, and that's because we also need to go to hairs and do the same thing. So let's open up hairs, and we're going to pull this in. and you're still not going to see a difference. We're going to put this in. It's still going to be the same, and that's because now that we have our hairs growing and our guides growing off of this fuzz map, we need to go back to Guides, twirl down Editing, and click Regrow. Once we've regrown, now we have our guides updated at only this section. And right now you can see we have two little guides to get an accurate growth on our object because our guides determine where the hair is going to be growing. So it's going to try and average between here and here. Where should this hair be? And you're going to have hairs intersecting with your geometry. I'm really going to show this off by taking our guides and taking our amount of guides up above here at roots. We're going to take this amount and we're going to say 5,000. I'm going to press enter and watch what happens. We have guides growing through our rock. This is because it's just averaging out the distance between those other guides that we already regrew, and it's confused and it's just intersecting through the rock. It didn't do a regrow. So what you need to do is you now need to regrow your guides to have them in the correct direction. See, now that we've done that, now it's no longer intersecting through that geometry. Just something I wanted to kind of point out that can be a little frustrating if you bump into this. So the full process really is taking your hair, setting your count, setting your density, and then clicking regrow. Make sure you set your count first and then regrow. So you regrow that exact count to get an accurate representation on the surface. Now that we've done that, what we're going to do is go to our hairs and we'll set our count to just default 5,000. Let's just do that for now and go ahead and send this off to Octane to be rendered for us. Once this is done, it'll take only a few moments. I want to point out that first there's a few things. The hair is too big and it gives a very interesting effect, and it's the wrong color. Let's talk about fixing that color first. What happens is inside of Octane is it is basically not using the color in our hair material. If we want to change the color for Octane, we have to actually apply an Octane material to our hair. Lucky for us, we already have that Octane material we created in the last tutorial. So all we have to do is drag this material onto our hair, and as soon as it loads, in a few seconds, almost instantly, we now have correctly colored hair to the surface of our object. Pretty handy. We already got this set up and going for us. Now let's talk about fixing this thickness problem. Let's double click our hair material right here. And we're going to go to thickness, and I'm actually going to turn off our Octane render just to give ourselves a little bit more speed when we're doing this. And we're going to set our root value I found to 0.5 and 0.1. I found those to be pretty decent sizes. Now what we're going to do as well is we're going to check on frizz and we're going to check on kink. This is just going to be a little simple kind of setup. So we're going to have something a little pretty to look at. I'm going to hit render again, and while it's doing that, I'm going to grab a drink of water. There we go. Nice. Good water. There we go. And here we go. Now we have our setup going here, and we can see that the hairs are about the right size. They're pretty decent. We got some kink going on. I still feel like they're a little too thick, but I mean, it depends on what distance you're going to be looking at. So I am going to go back to my thickness, and I think I'm going to take this to a value of 0.3 and 0.07. Just, you don't have to follow me exactly. It all depends on the scale of your scene. We can see that that's updated there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to select our hair. We're going to go to hairs, and we'll set this to 50,000 by adding 1 0. And we'll have our finished setup pretty much ready to go. This is about as far as I'm going to take it here as far as the hair is concerned. Then we're going to move on to our second setup once this loads in. Now feel free to continue tweaking this. You can improve this greatly by adding more hairs, getting a proper size, reducing the height, but from a distance, now you can see from a distance, this looks really, really good. Let's pop this up, let this render a few frames, and already we have some pretty cool looking fuzz going on our rock. And actually, I feel it's just like they're too big. They're too tall. So if you really wanted to perk this scene up, I would recommend actually lowering the length to something much smaller and then increasing the density. So if you really wanted to make this look good, you're going to take your hairs, and you're going to take your thickness and maybe leave that the same, but you're going to take your length. We could go ahead and set that up. Let's go click on hairs, guides, length, 0.5, and amount of hairs, maybe like 150, 1,000. Now, let's take our segments and cut this way back. Let's cut this down to like 6. What this does is Octane calculates hair as geometry. The more segments you have, the more geometry. So if we cut our segments back, Octane actually views this as half as much hair, even though it visually looks like just as much. So we have much faster render times and much faster load times with less segments, but we still see just as many hair. Now this can make your hair look a little chunky when you have it bending and twisting, but from this distance, not going to be too much of a problem. So this should work out pretty decent. So that's a little tip for you. You can pull your segments back and then increase your count. It'll actually give you a better effect, and it'll take less render time. Pretty handy. Let that go. Few more moments. It does take some time, and this just comes down flat out to your CPU and how good it is at processing that data and getting that loaded in to Octane. So if you've got a few like dual 10-core Xeon processors, you're going to be churning through this pretty quick. But not to fear if you can't afford that. I will show you the second technique after this, which is much faster and quicker. It's going to not be using our hair object whatsoever. It's actually going to be using a mix material. Here we go. Now we're having something that's much more realistic, and it's really rendering pretty dang fast once it actually gets that loaded in. So that's pretty handy right there. And yep, this is as far as I'm going to take it. You still notice that we still have these kind of patchy spots right here that's pretty easily seen. Again, recommend increase your density. I would recommend like 500,000 hairs, and that would take forever to load, but it would look gorgeous. So now that we have a pretty decent effect going on with this hair, I've given you guys like the basics on how to set this up. Let's stop the whole thing and let's move on to talk about the second way of setting this up. Select our hair object, and we're just going to delete it. And we'll take our hair material and get rid of that as well. Now let's start talking about how to set up the other way of doing this. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Materials, Octane Diffuse Material. We're going to make another material. Let's open this up, open our node editor, and what we're going to do is we're going to grab in our albedo right there, our image texture, and we're just going to grab that and plug that into diffuse. That's the only thing we're going to be touching right there. Now that we got that set up, what we're going to do is we're going to let Octane load. There we go. And what we can do is we're going to pull this out of the way just for a moment, and we're going to take this Octane diffuse material, right, and we're going to open it up. We're going to click Octane Node Editor, and then what we're going to do, or I'm sorry, actually let's just do this a whole simpler way. Let's just do all this without being in the node editor. Let's go to Materials. Let's go to Octane Mix Material, right? We're going to open up our Octane Mix Material. We have our two materials here. Let's take our first one. This is our main rock one, right? We're going to drag this one as Material 2. We're going to take the other one and put that in Material 1. So now we have a mix material with two materials inside of it, and we can open up our mix material, click Node Editor, and now you can see we have them overlaying each other a little bit. So let's kind of organize the system out a little bit here. Let's pull these down. It's a little messy. Just kind of move everything around. Here we go. So now we have our two. We have a glossy material, and we have our diffuse material, and we have a float value determining where this is being rendered on our rock. So let's go ahead, hit render, and take a look at what we got right now. It'll take just a moment, and here you go. We have our basic rock, nothing too special going on, pretty simple right here, right? Let's take our diffuse material and pull this off. Just because I want to take our image texture, I'm just going to pull that away for a second just to show you guys what's going on here. Now, if we take our float value, right, this float value that we have plugged into our amount, we can pull this up right here to a value of 1. And Octane, oops, I completely forgot. We need to take our Octane mix material and we need to apply it to our assets. Let's just drag it over top of that. You guys are probably like, what's he doing? There we go. Now we have that applied there. And we can see at a value of 1 with our float value, we're getting pure white. And with a value of 0, we're going to be getting that other material. So instead of feeding it this float value, let's delete this. Let's drag in this little fuzz map. Let's pull our fuzz map in as an image texture and drag this into the amount. And you can see we're getting that exact effect, except now it looks kind of like snow's covering our rocks. We're getting some of that white there, and we're getting some of that glossy. So instead of this, for this material here, let's back in and apply that diffuse, right? We're applying that diffuse, but this time what we're going to do is we're having the correct color, but this time we're going to go to our roughness and pump it up to something like 1. So it's going to be really, really rough where that hair is going to be. And that moss is a little too rough. Let's bring this whole thing, let's go to here, roughness, something like 0.5. There we go, little better. 0.3, better yet. Okay, 0.3. 0.3 is pretty good. Now what we need to do to really kind of push this, to give it some a little bit more texture to it, I feel, is we need to grab our displacement map, or actually, first off, what we need is a bump map specifically for this spot. Luckily, inside of our assets, we do have a bump map supplied, and that is located right here. Let's take this bump map, pull it in, and we'll plug this bump map into bump on our grass material. And let's name that. Let's select this material, basics, let's call this moss. There we go. So here's our moss material. And what we're going to do now, select get active mat so we can actually update that. So now our names are updating. Wish I would do that live. But let's select our bump. And let's take our power, which is not showing up. Why is power not? Oh, it's right in front of me. What am I thinking? Power's right here. Let's take our power and set this to like 5. It's pretty good. Maybe 10. There we go. Now we're getting a lot of power in that. And you can see what we've done is we've just given the illusion a little bit of kind of some depth going on, some kind of little bit more happening to this. Now what we can really do to kind of send this home is if we go down to our other material, our regular material here, and we take our roughness right here. And so remember how we set this to a value of 1.25? If we set this up to like 4, we're going to reduce that gamma to make it a little bit less less rough. And what we also need to do is we need to take our specular, and let's just pull this guy out. There, oh, sorry, I'm doing that on the wrong screen for you guys. Here we go. Here's what we need to do to set this up. We need to take our specular was plugged in like this. So what we're going to do, I'm going to grab a drink of water real quick. Sorry guys, sorry for the hold up. There we go. Allergy season is kicked in. Is a shame. For those with allergies out there, is no fun. But now that we have our specular plugged in, what we need to do is, what I was doing here is we have our roughness map right here, right? And this was at 1.25. This means our roughness is going to be a little high, right? So to kind of really show off what I'm talking about here, let's take our specular and unplug this, right? Here's our roughness going on. If I set this to a value of 4, right, on our roughness, let's set this to 4. We're going to get less roughness on the surface of our object where our material does not have this fuzz map. Now where the fuzz map is applied, we're not going to be getting this specular, just to kind of show off really what's going on. So this will help give the illusion, whoops, that there is moss on our object, because we're going to have a real shiny surface. See right here, very shiny surface, and then instantly not a shiny surface, very rough surface. Not glossy at all, which just kind of really adds a little bit more of that realism. Now, first off, this is way too shiny. So to fix this, we do want to pull in some more roughness on this guy. So let's select our roughness and bring this back down to say 2.2. Would that be good enough? That might be good enough, depending on the look that you're going for. Still too shiny for me. Select our roughness and we'll bring this back to 1.25. There we go. That's better. And we're going to take our specular and we're going to plug that back in. I was just doing that to show that to you guys. But let's bring our gamma down to 1.25 for you. Maybe you want to bring it up. How do we bring it down? Aha. 0.1. Let's bring this to something like 0.5. There we go. Now we're going to get some specular. We get some highlights on that, but not too much. Let's bring it down even lower, say 0.2. Here we go. Now we're getting enough. Yep, 0.2 is a good value. So now that we have 0.2 set up, you can see we're already getting this kind of mossy look much more heavily on our rock. And we can actually quickly compare. Here is the original right here. Let it load. There we go. Here's our original. It's kind of mossy looking, but not too much. And then here is our new mixed material. So look at this spot right here specifically. What we're lagging out, boom, instantly. There we go. Much more mossy. First off, you're probably noticing the bump is way too strong. So let's go ahead and select our bump right up here in our moss texture and bring the power back down to like 50. Power 50 is still pretty high. 25. 25 is much better. We can select our little preview finder. So maybe this is 15. There we go. Yeah, maybe 10. Okay, there we go. 10's a good number. 10's pretty decent. Now that we have this set up, what we need to do next is add a little bit of displacement. This will kind of fake some of that moss for us. So the way we're going to do that is we have our moss material right here, and here is the displacement slot. All we have to do, luckily, is take our displacement material right here, grab this, drag it in, and plug this, we wish, into our displacement slot. Now we can't do that directly. We have to actually take displacement right here, pull this over, plug this into displacement, take our displacement material, and plug this into the input. Now it is going to take a moment to calculate that. I think it already has, actually. That was quite quick. We're going to take our height, and we're going to pull it up a little bit. There we go, and it is working. We just need a higher resolution, let's say 2K. And, you know, what I'm doing wrong here is we can't calculate displacement based off of this material because we're running it into a mixed material. So here's what we have to do, right? I'm going to drag a drink of water real quick. There we go. Whew, sorry for drinking so much water, guys. Allergies are no fun. What we're going to do now is we're going to unplug displacement from here. Here's what we have to do. Select our displacement, select our image texture, and let's drag them both over here. So displacement's coming up here and our displacement map. And we're going to plug this into displacement here. And then we're finally going to get an effect. And it is because it froze my computer up for a second as it calculates this. Alrighty guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. I had my displacement height way too high, completely crashed, froze my system up. But we are back, and here is what we got. Displacement is still too high. I recommend a value of like 0.4, 0.3. Let's see, a value of like 0.3. Yeah, that'll be good. So now we have a value of 0.3 doing just a little bit more displacement on the surface of our object. That still might be too much. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, I'm going to say 0.1. 0.1. Just really limit that amount. 0.1. There we go. Let it think instantly. There we go. Okay, maybe 0.2. It's making me think. But the problem here is we want displacement only where the grass is going to be. So how do we go about doing that? Now, we can add some displacement to the surface of the object, but the problem is we're limiting to only having displacement here. So the only way I can think of limiting our displacement is to take our grass map, and we're going to take our displacement, and we're going to have to limit it based off of that value there. Or, sorry for my rambling. Basically, what we need to do is, this is going to be an interesting little thing. I'm thinking we're going to need to take a mixed material. I'm going to mix this one, and we're going to mix this one, but our amount is also going to be determined by this one. See what I'm saying? And now let's take this whole thing and plug this into displacement. I think this should work. I think it should. Maybe. This will be very interesting to find out. So what we did is, sorry, I'm coming up with this on the fly. I just had an idea for this. What we can do is if we take our moss texture and we plug this into the amount for our mixed texture, and we plug this into texture slot 1, and then we take our image texture for our displacement, and we plug that to texture slot 2, and we run both of them into displacement. If we increase our displacement to something, say, like 1, will we see anything? No, we're not. What if I say like 5? Nope, nothing is happening. Can we run displacement into a mixed texture? I don't think we can, because this isn't doing anything. So that's dangerous to put it that high. So that's a shame. That's kind of a bummer. This might be a limitation of Octane. If I run this into here, it'll work. This may just flat out be a limit of Octane. You're going to need to generate a new map that is based off of, let me check my settings real quick. See if these shaders. Float textures for standard. Nope, there's no way that we could do that. Okay, so select our displacement. We're going to set a value of like 0.2 like we did before. And what we're going to have to do is I think we're just really kind of stuck unless you wanted to take this image and bring it in with this image and bring it into Photoshop and overlay both those images and then crop them based off of this alpha. See what I'm saying? And then we'd take that new image we generated in Photoshop and then pipe that off and plug it into here. And then we could get displacement only here and not there. That is an option. Because I don't think we can pump displacement into this material because it's just not going to let us unless we could try. Let's bring this whole thing displacement. Are you going to work? Nope, doesn't work at all. I'm going to set a value of like 4. Reload that scene. Maybe it'll take it now. I don't think it will because we have to run the displacement into that material. So this is a limitation. Now, if you really did not want to have to go to Photoshop, you could just displace the whole object, and that would be, let's not do that yet. Let's set this to a value of like 0.3. Yeah, 0.3. And you could do that, and that looks pretty good. I mean, realistically, what we have going here, if we crank our bump up a little bit more, just add that little bit more kind of realism to this here. Maybe bring our power up to 25. It's not too bad. I would like to take our moss texture because moss still is a little bit reflective. And let's take this and set this to a glossy. And you can see now we're getting all that gloss on there. But let's take our roughness. Select our material, go to roughness. Here it is. And this is a value of like 0.5. A little bit more. 0.6. Here we go, and now to take these colors off, because we are having moss, we could grab like a green color and darken it down substantially, reduce its color, and pump that in. So we're just having a little bit of a green reflection. And you know what? Let's take our specular. Yeah, let's take the specular. Let's pipe this into our specular. So we have that color coming through. Or, yeah, no, I don't think we want to do that. Let's just take our base roughness, set this back to black, and let's pipe in a value of, say, like 1. And then we can take our specular strength and pull this back to like 0.3. Just so we are getting a little bit, because I really feel that that has a lot to do with getting that realistic value there. Let's bring this over. Let's see what we got. Do we have something? Okay. Not bad. Not looking too mossy. Let's take our index and set this to 1.45 just so we can have a little bit. It's going to be a little bit more reflective. Specular is still too high. Let's bring this down to like 0.1. Because if we bring this to 0, we're going to get rid of that entirely. It's almost like, let's take our power. Okay, this is an interesting thing. Let's take our power, and if we take this to, say, 0.1, right? We're going to have more of this punching in. We're going to be losing that that consistency between this material, our octane, and our moss material. So we want to divide them up even harder by increasing this value to something like 5. There we go. That's a little bit more intense. 10. Let's call it up to 50, and that has punched that away pretty distinctly, I feel like. It's made a very big distinction between the moss side of our rock and the non-moss side of our rock. So that added a lot more. And from a distance, I feel like this does a pretty good job, really. I mean, quite frankly, I think we really got that down, even with the displacement not working. Comparing this to the image of what this is actually capable of becoming, we're really close. The key thing will be this spot here, because this really stands out. So how does that look on our rock, this back corner with that moss? How does that look? You know, actually, that looks pretty good. I feel like we got that pretty decently. Now, the next thing up is our color, our lighting. That has a huge, huge thing to do with selling this off. We have really the technique down. I'm going to go to my HDRI, go in one layer, like I talked about in the other tutorial, and change my HDRI. Make sure we are in the image texture. Make sure we drill down when we select our HDRI environment. So if we go HDRI tag, select the image inside of there, drill down one level so we are in that image texture, and then change it. So here's a really good one. Pull this on, nice kind of green, not really what I want. Maybe this right here. There we go, this is a little flatter. How does this moss sit back here? This really does look pretty good. I feel like that we got that moss look down pretty well. Let's try this one. It's not too good. How about this one? There we go. Here we go. I like this one. You may want to try more HDRIs out. Yeah, that's a good one. Nice environment. There we go. This is getting kind of a decent rock. But you guys know what I'm talking about now. You know what I'm going for. Let's turn the whole thing off. Select our rock. Go to objects. Go to targeted area light. Press E. Move it up. Move it over. Bring it back this way. A little bit higher. A little bit farther. Let's zoom in and see what we got. Here we go. We're just going to make our own lighting. Do it that way. And yeah, not too shabby. I really feel like that is looking pretty good. I mean, you can light this however you want. Like, you can make a really kind of nice light setup. We could pull this way down here, shorten that, widen it, maybe a little taller. I'm just rambling on at this point. Take our power, bring that down to 50. No, make it way lower, 25, 10. There we go, 10. Loving that. Hold down Control, copy this whole light, bring it over to here, do the same thing on this other side, take our first light, right here, this one on the left, select X tag, and let's take its temperature and say like 8,000. Let's take the other light on this side and set its value to something like 4,000. So now we have like a warm and cold lighting environment. We have our nice pretty looking stone right there. And let's take the whole thing, copy this orange light, and copy and make a third light. So we got good 3-point lighting. And this over, bring it up. There we go. Nice little key light. Key light up there. And hop in, and we'll take our third light, our key light, and we'll set this to like 6,500. We're just kind of happy medium between both. And there you go. This is kind of like a quick 3-point lighting setup. Not bad. Thank you guys for sitting in through all of this kind of ramble. And as a way of saying thank you guys for listening this long, I'm going to give you a little special tip that's like a little hidden treasure that you probably never known that Octane could do. And what we can do is we can create an infinite floor without any seams. All we have to do this is take a material, diffuse material, apply this to our floor, right? Then go to Objects, Texture Environment. See how we have a seam though? What we're going to do is take our Octane Texture Environment, select this, set our primary type, from primary environment to visible environment only. And we'll twirl this down and see how it's a back plate. So if we uncheck this, it basically doesn't exist at all. So we're not getting in our reflections, because if I turn this on, it's in our reflections. We don't want that, or refractions, don't want that. We don't want this to be contributing to environment whatsoever, but we do want to see it, but we are getting seams. Here's how we fix that. Double click our floor material. It has to be a diffuse material. That's the only downside. Click on Common, check on Matte. Now watch what happens when we click Matte. Instantly seamless floor. Like, it's beautiful how this works. It's really, really cool how we can do that. And what's so cool is if we select our HDRI environment and change the color of our RGB spectrum, say we want like a nice green background, it will change the floor color for us automatically. That is what's super, super cool about this right here, is it just does that automatically for us. And if we open up our Octane settings, go to kernels, and turn on alpha channel, it actually takes away that entire background and gives us a perfect alpha. So if we take our Octane sky, select that, go into RGB spectrum, change this to pure white, make sure it is pure white, we get nice black shadows, nice, like, good kind of color on the ground. We get a little bit of our lighting kind of going, all on a perfect alpha that could be stuffed in, composited to all kinds of scenes for you guys, if that's what you wanted to do. Uncheck alpha shadows, Or I'm sorry, alpha channel, not alpha shadows. But there you go. That's that little bit of a tidbit. And if you don't want to use that at any time, you can just literally open up your material, go to common and uncheck matte and turn off this environment, and you can have back what we had there. But yeah, there we go. That is it. That's the full setup. I hope you guys found this tutorial helpful. If you did, please leave a thumbs up. If you didn't and you felt that I rambled on too much and it just took way too longer than you were hoping, please leave a thumbs down. And if you have anything else you'd like to say, or if you have any problems or questions, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you all in the next tutorial.